Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where our intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models. So the intention of this show is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing amazing things in the world. And so joining me tonight is a guy who is doing just that. His name is Mr. Olivier, and he is the host of the Awaken the Awesome podcast. And I love that title because that's what this show is about. It's about awakening the awesome in brothers. So, man, I'm really excited to have him on the show. He's also the fearless leader of the Republic of Awesomeness. I love that. And he is a self-proclaimed motivation enthusiast. And by the way, he's also an avid photographer. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show. Mr. Oliver, how you doing, man?
Mike, thank you so much. Thank you so much for welcoming me on your show. It's an honor and a thrill. I really love how we connected, on LinkedIn, and it's amazing how from all the corners of the universe. Say what you will, but it's always great to make these connections happen. But thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you so much.
Well, see, it is my belief that there are no accidents in the perfect universe. And we have been brought together by divine appointment. And the intention that you and I both have are the same. And I believe that's why we've basically attracted each other to come together to engage in these dialogues. So again, you extended an invitation for me to be on your show. And I said, man, I got to get this guy on my show. So all in all, what we're doing is the same thing. We're awakening the awesome in everyone. So again, it is my absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Now, before we start talking about your podcast and some other things, I want to just kind of jump in with a few icebreakers. So first of all,
Sure.
tell us a little bit about where you're from and maybe a little bit about what it was like growing up for you.
For sure. Basically, officially, I was born in Ottawa, Canada, but I grew up in Haiti. My parents are Haitian. I'm from Native Haitian. I identify as Haitian, basically, even though my passport is Canadian, but I identify as Haitian. Grew up in Port-au-Prince. My mother's a doctor. My father's a civil engineer. Two siblings. Growing up, I could say we was like middle class, if you will, because we weren't rich, but we weren't poor. We had good times and we had bad times, and that's something that especially growing up in a third world country, you learn how to be grateful. And my parents were two people who also came from humble means in themselves. They really taught us, me and my siblings, how to just strive for excellence, never be ashamed of who you are, never think of yourself higher than anyone, but also always expect higher of yourself. And those are the values that I carried through, just growing up, and my basically childhood was pretty cool, pretty basic. I wasn't like a top student growing up, but I learned the school of life really quick. That was always the distinctive aspect between myself and my siblings, because I'm always the guy who could actually drop off, somewhere in the Antarctic, and next week I made friends with the Eskimos, if you will. I'm always that guy. I'm very resourceful, and I carried that through. I came to Montreal in 2001 for college, and also my wife here, who's also Haitian. And lo and behold, such a small island, our parents knew each other from their childhood, and basically, been together 16 years, two kids, and a couple of chapters, but that's where we are.
Outstanding. Now, so take a moment and name a woman who has inspired you to become who you are.
Oh man, you asked that question on a previous interview because I listened to a bunch of all the other episodes, so that really caught me off guard. But wow, definitely my wife. My wife and I, like I said, 16 years. As they say, not 16 days. It's been a hell of a ride, and it's been an adventure. It's been fun. It's been challenging. It's been revealing. It's been so uplifting and heartwarming. So I'm definitely have to say my wife, because it takes a special kind of person, as I like to say, to deal with your level of crazy. You don't want somebody like you, but you can actually someone who could actually, deal with you, and I'm just saying that as a taboo, as a like, a punishment or some sort. But you need to acceptance is something that's very powerful with human beings, because different strokes, different folks. But when you find that person who actually welcomes you with open arms, with mind and heart, that's something to cherish. Definitely my mother. My mother is a very strong woman, taught me a lot about discipline, taught me a lot about standing up for yourself. She's been very fierce in her upbringing. Again, classical. I grew up like old school. So my parents did not play. Caribbean mothers do not play around. So that all obviously left a mark in many places. I love your mom, but that's definitely something I hold dear. Definitely taught me about how to, what to expect from others, from your partners, how to be, a strong woman, how to be a supportive motherly figure, how to be nurturing and caring, but also how to be firm and direct. And for a special note, actually, be my sister. My older sister has always been my hero, my number one champion. Also, has always been in my corner. She's always been the high performer of myself and my siblings. And it's always someone I've always looked up to. She's always been my best friend. And off the bat, three people. I'm sorry, I'm just rambling, but you just asked the
that,
question. So, but
that's okay. But
it came
see,
from the heart.
here's what I love about that. First of all, there is this stereotype about Black men and relationships, especially marriage. And so it's always heartwarming for me when the brother is willing to say, my wife is awesome and I love what we have together. So that's something that I'm a huge proponent of, talking about and being open and sharing how marriage can be an amazing thing.
It's
And
true.
I've been blissfully married for the past 18 years myself. My wife and I have been together 20 years. And I just love her to death. She is just, a lot of people say she's their best friend. Well, my wife is my partner. She's my life partner. And we get to share everything together. And so I count my blessings every day for my wife. So I appreciate you acknowledging your wife in that way. Now,
It's true. It's true.
name a man that you look up to and admire.
Oh, Oh man, it has to be Mr. Day Senior, obviously. Definitely, because that man, whether through for myself or my own guy friends, the guys grew up with, we always talk about my dad. My dad, he taught me everything I need to know about being a man, how to go out there. He was just like my father always taught. Again, he was military trained because my grandfather was in the military back in Haiti, so he was very firm but loving. He was on the road a lot because, like I said, he's an engineer, so he's always like working on job sites and stuff. So I can't blame him. I always say very openly, I cannot blame him for being absent because we knew we were loved. We knew we were always wanted. When he was there, he was there. When he had to be the police, he had to be the, and we respected that. Because looking back with kids myself, I understand that what, it's not easy being a man. I'm saying that, but also a father, a nurturer, a provider, a protector, a teacher. You know, that's something that really left a mark on me. And in many ways, I can say that, the best of what I have to offer to my kids as a father, as a male presence, to my wife as well, as a spouse, I got from my dad. That's definitely, I'm bringing my own formula to his schematics, if you will. But, definitely he's basically, he's someone I really look up to. Every time I think about, okay, what's the best example of, how to carry myself through this world? As myself, as my role in this society, I definitely look back to my dad. And it's something I tell him all the time. I thank him for it.
Nice, nice. Once again, another stereotype that you've just blown up. This whole idea of the father not being in our lives. And so I'm glad to hear that you and your dad have such an amazing connection. My younger son is 36, and my oldest son is 39.
Oh,
And
wow.
if I were to die today, I would have no regrets because I had one of my biggest goals in life was to be a great dad. And without question, I know I am a great dad. I love being a dad. And I also have a daughter who's 33, by the way. But
Hmm.
I just love being a dad. It's just something that's really important to me and something that I just love being. So great to connect with another dad like yourself.
It's
Now,
important. It's important. The best thing we can give to our kids is basically our presence. Because again, kids don't need stuff. Kids need
exactly,
presence. Kids need love and guidance. That's the best thing you can give.
absolutely. Now, if I gave you a magic wand and
Hmm.
you could create anything your heart desired, what would your life look like 10 years from now with this magic wand?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Uh, Magic wand. 10 years from now. 10 years from now. Wow. You just sprung that one on me. Um, I'm a very avid reader, so there's going to be a huge library somewhere, obviously. Looking out for my kids because I always want to look out for my kids and their legacy. Make sure that my kids are provided for, both in education and means and resources. Make sure that again, people I care about, because again, my parents, and I'm looking at it from really from the heart. My parents aren't getting any younger, and Haiti right now, where they are, isn't unfortunately the most, jolliest of places, because for social political or circumstances notwithstanding. So of course, just looking out because I'm really thinking about other people, not really thinking about myself. So as you ask that question, I'm thinking about any which way I can actually contribute to the well-being of those I care about before myself. But if I had to be a little bit selfish, like I said, a really huge library.
Nice.
I'm a big fan of books, but that's off the top. That's what I can think about.
Got you. Now, there are some people who are pessimistic about the future, while there are
Hmm.
others, like myself, who are extremely optimistic. So, where do you fall on the spectrum between pessimism and optimism in the future in general? Where do you fall?
I am an unapologetic optimist. I take things for what they are, but also I always believe that there is an opportunity and a potential to do better. I don't fall into the trap of thinking that because things are bad means things will always be bad. Things are just bad right now. And even now, there's a lot of people right now who are coming into their revelation of the potential that they have within themselves to actually do better. People have used these circumstances, this pandemic, and all the circumstances that we know to actually stop and take a second. Okay, what's the best that I can do? Lost my job, uh, things are not going well. We're waiting for my stimulus check and everything, all the circumstances that you can. And you're like, okay, but I'm alive. I'm not dead. That would be the worst scenario, right? I'm not dead. And okay, if you can work from there, what's worse that could happen? You haven't died yet. I'm an unapologetic optimist. I don't fall into the trap of just being moody and making excuses. I don't have money. I don't have the resources. I don't have the degrees. I don't have the car. I don't have the connections. I don't have the job. Whatever. There's always something that you can look forward to. There's always a resource, a decision, a choice, an action that you can take to flip the switch and make that little nudge, as I like to say, just move the needle ever so slightly forward. I do totally believe. Sometimes I annoy people. It's like, okay, you had a bad day. I have bad days, but I have a bad day right now. But tomorrow will come. Hopefully, you don't control tomorrow. Yesterday's gone. But what can you do right now? It sounds cheesy and kooky, but I'm very real about that. The universe cannot hit a moving target. Speak with intent, act with purpose, and you'd be surprised the revelations that will come before you. So
Absolutely.
definitely, I'm an optimist. That's just me.
Absolutely. See, that's why we were brought together. See, like attracts like. So
My
that's
man.
cool how that works. Now I'd like you to introduce Oliver the professional. So tell the audience about what you do. What's your profession?
Well, and on my 9 to 5, as I say, like, my Bruce Wayne type of scenario, I basically work technical after sales for a construction company here in Montreal. Basically, because I've done basically customer relations a good part of my career. It's always been involved with relationships with the customer, with the client. So I do client services a lot. Took a step back from the entire corporate shtick because a couple of years ago I used to run health and sanitation services for a hospital. But right now, took a step back because my son was born, and just to create balance and more harmony within my marriage, basically because at the time, as I like to tell people, bank account was really good, but home life, mental health was not doing well. So I had to take a step back, take that very conscious choice to take a step back. And you know what? What's the basic that I need? I want my wife to be happy. I want to be present for my kids, and I need to be okay with myself. So when I took this job 4 years ago, I'm like, I walk into the office. Is this the kind of job where you expect me to answer emails from you on a Saturday during a barbecue? It's like, nope. Your hours are your hours. You come in. If you're here, we'll support you. And they've basically given me exactly what I asked them. They basically give me support when I need it. And right now, it's really cool. But right now, it's just basically just handling customer relations for contractors and placing order desk and stuff. So I run a lot of coordination with sales and just a lot of shipping and stuff. But on the other end of the spectrum, I also run this little podcast called Awaken the Awesome. which has been going on for about 3 years now. Wow, time flies. And it's been my labor of love as of late. Created a great community where I'm connecting with like-minded people, as I like to say, people just like you and me, awesome people just like you, and who have that little spark that I like to identify that qualifies as awesome. Whether it's single mothers, raising wonderful children, whether it's up and coming recording artists, whether it's powerful motivational speakers, whether it's, obstacle course racing athletes who are basically, just don't have legs. I love that guy. He's a personal hero of mine. His name is Casey. And he just like, again, he lost his legs when he was 6. And he's the most dynamically motivated person you've ever met on your life. Like every time I talk to him, it's a jolt of energy and just shows you have no excuses. You have no excuses, none. And basically that's how I ran with. And podcast host, and it's been something that's been a lot of revelation because I've met a lot of wonderful people. We're up to 120 episodes and counting, and it's something that podcasting revealed in terms of building terrific relationships and meeting people that I otherwise would never would have had. I've interviewed people all over the world, and it's something that's been very rewarding in regards to there's always someone out there who needs that little nudge, that little word of encouragement, and that's what I want to bring to the table.
Fantastic, fantastic. So that's the passion project is
Yes, sir.
awaken the awesome. Yeah, awaken the awesome. I love saying that. Now,
And my wife wasn't that big of a fan when I first got with it. When I first decided that's what I was going to call, I was like, "Are you sure? It's kind of a mouthful. Are you sure, babe? It will. It shall. It shall." And just like you, a lot of people are giving me feedback. I like that title. I like that title. I didn't set out to please people, but when you get the acknowledgement, when you believe it true to your heart, you just run with it. And eventually, you know what? Things fall into place.
yeah, it's actually very powerful because most of us don't recognize that we have awesome within us. And
Yes.
every human being has awesome in them. And it's up to us to awaken that. Now, again, my passion is giving people tools to do that. That's why I write, that's why I speak, because what I know inherently in every human being, I'll just call it a spark of divinity. So you can call it whatever you want to call it. That
Oh, I
spark
like
of
that.
divinity,
Spark of divinity.
yeah, the spark of divinity is your awesome. That's what your awesome is. And when you connect to that spark of divinity, when you connect to your awesomeness, it's amazing what you can accomplish with your life. So I really, really believe that. So before we jump into talking about your podcast, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today.
You
And
think?
here in America, obviously racial tension is, it's really
It's intense.
on the
It's intense. It's
surface,
something.
it looks like the world is going to hell in a handbasket. I have a different
Mm-hmm.
perspective, but I just wanted to talk to you as a brother from
Mm-hmm.
Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And are you guys getting as much as we are about the protests and everything in Canada? Is it dominating your airways up there?
Yes. Oh, yeah. A lot of people. There've been a lot of protests in the local metropolitan area of Montreal. There have been a lot of marches. A lot of people have been voicing their opinion either on the socials or just publicly. There was a massive protest in some of the local, basically, local police department. Basically, basically what would be the head of the head police office downtown Montreal, and it's something because this is something that is not isolated. This is something that has culminated to an unbelievable amount of frustration that we know of. Not just for Black people, because I'm taking this to an even greater scale. In terms on a human scale, this injustice is one too many. It was already unbearable at some point, but the fact that this will not pass as something that we're just going to brush away. And that is something that has resonated even beyond borders. So, yeah, a lot of people, not just in Montreal, but also all over Canada, it's something that is being talked about because there is also a reality of racial tension also within the history of Canada, with first world nations and everything. That's a lot of reparations going on there as well. So it has to open up, some dark wounds for a lot of communities as well. So yeah, it's something that is touching a lot of people, and it's I'm not going to say beautiful, but it is something that you have to acknowledge because it is so powerful. And I'm just really so proud to see humanity coming together as one. It's
Yeah.
a lot of respect you have to have there.
Yeah. So my perception, if you will, is that this event has cracked open the heart of the world. And what I mean by that is just what you mentioned. Now, I know here in America, Black people only make up about 13% of the population.
Hmm.
And I don't know what the mix is in Canada, but I know there can't be too many brothers up there.
There are
But
quite a few, but I think the percentage is, it's similar. It's similar.
is it similar?
Yeah, yeah, because the thing is, Canada is very multicultural. So
Okay.
you have a lot of communities, but if we're just talking about, African Americans, if you will, just black people, there are quite a few. There are quite a few, especially, located whether in Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec. Quebec has a lot, obviously, but yeah, I think the percentages are similar. It's pretty comparable.
So the point, though, is like yourself, I am inspired because when I see people of all races coming together to stand up for
Hmm.
not just injustice, but just the it feels like to me, I remember when Martin Luther King died. And this obviously was in the 60s. And I remember as a kid, there was this feeling that I had that something had shifted. Because obviously the whole civil rights movement was driven by this man, and all of a sudden he's gone, and of course black people. But I was amazed at the white people who were mourning, even as a kid. I just had a sense that wow, this guy was really something, that he had white people crying and going to his funeral, and I remember thinking about that as a kid. And so I think George Floyd's death is similar in a lot of ways, that it's cracked open the heart of people of all races.
For
And
sure.
long term, I believe it's going to have a powerful positive effect on the world at large. And so, again, as I sit here and I just sort of watch, I don't know if you're familiar, there's a city here in Texas called Vidor.
Hmm.
And Vidor at one point was one of the racist cities in Texas. And
Really?
I don't know if you may have heard, but there was a guy, um, James Bird, I believe was his name, who some white guys tied him to the back of a truck and drug him around until he died. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, it was a terrible, terrible, tragic event. And this has been probably 10, 15 years ago. Well, to see the people of Vidor marching and protesting with Black Lives Matter signs spoke volumes to me.
It says something.
Yeah, that something has shifted. So again, my hope is that this continues. And again, I'm an optimist, and I think there's a lot of powerful, positive things going to come out of this. So it's good to hear that the northern part of the U.S., the Canadians, are also embracing this movement. So with
And you
that
know
being
what?
said, go ahead.
The thing is, what also, to piggyback on that one, I think there's also this consciousness where we have to realize that, yeah, you can say that, this has been going on for a while. This has been going on for a while. This has been going on for a while, but we all have it within us. And I'm going to say something very powerful. You guys can believe me or not. You can either be the perpetuation of the values and stigmas and biases that have conditioned you to be you, or you can be the end and the start of a new whatever it is, a new family, a new culture, a new language. You can be the start of a different set of circumstances. Probably not going to change with you, but you can be the start of the change. And that's something that I believe that we have within us every single day. You can make a choice to be different. And as they say, silence is the language of the cowards. You can't stay silent in a circumstance like this. I don't care if you be clumsy into what you need to say, but you need to speak up. You need to say that you disagree. You need to say that this is unfair. You need to say that this is horrible. I am lining up um, very cautiously to know how I'm going to address this with my young kids, but I know I have a responsibility to, because unfortunately, yes, Canada, Quebec, if you will, yes, there's a high population of Caucasians as opposed to, blacks. So I have to be very real with my children, let them know not to frighten them, but to enlighten them to the fact that yes, You are the black kid. Yes, there's going to be different expectations or considerations of you just because of your skin tone. The conversation has not happened yet, but my wife has sat down with me and saying, like, you know what? Because this is all over the media, you can't miss it. So when your child comes up to you and asks you, Daddy, what's racism? Okay. And we haven't had the talk yet, but my wife apparently, like, my daughter just like slipped that in there. you know, I'm like, wow, okay, this has to happen, because this is the current reality. I had to learn it over time with my own experiences in life. But my kids are 7 and 4, and it's a very chilling and powerful thing to know that I have the responsibility to arm them for what's coming. There will be a change, but it has to start with me. I need to let them know.
Now you have two girls,
Well, I have a girl and a boy.
a girl and a boy. Okay, cool,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Girl
She's
and boy.
7. He's 4.
Got it. All right. So now I have come to know
Mm-hmm.
that there are only two things that will cause a man to want to change. One is pain, and the other is what I call divine discontent, which is simply an internal feeling that something in our lives is just not right.
Mm-hmm.
What caused you to begin your journey of personal growth and transformation? Was it pain
Oh,
or was it divine discontent?
it was pain. It was pain, and um, how did it happen? I think it's very vivid. I think it was basically, I like to say, when I tell the story, I like to say my son saved my life. It was around the time where my daughter was just born. My wife was pregnant with our second child. I had left the company I was working for like 10 years. Basically, that company was like my second home, basically, because I started at the bottom of the ladder. And being a person of color, I basically, through my own efforts and my own, just conditioning of just putting in the work and putting in the grind and, keeping my head down and just like doing what I need to do, I did very well for myself. And at some point, it just became, just too heavy. And again, it was way too far. The office had moved and logistics, it wasn't fine. So there was that. But what happened is like the company I switched to, that was the hospital, was very demanding. Like I said, it wasn't a bad company. It was just I did not have the right attitude. And I gave a lot of myself. I gave a lot of hours. I sacrificed a lot and I put up with a lot. And when I had to come at the crossroads and say, like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Because at some point I realized that my son's gonna be born. I wasn't present. I know I wasn't present. I've apologized to my wife for this. I was toxic because obviously, and I'm sure you've heard this, Mike, you know, how can you possibly just want to shower me with your negative toxicity and just I'm out there fending for us and providing for us? Do you not see what I'm providing? And when you have that internal dialogue and you're like, well, she has a right to be upset. You're just not home. And she's home pregnant with another kid. Do you know what that does to someone stuck at home? No, you don't, because you're out there. You need to have that's where empathy comes from. You need to see the perspective from other person because it's so easy to blame when you don't understand the other person. So all this to say that I quit. I talked to my supervisor at the time, like, listen, what you need me to give to this position, because I was, eventually I would come up to a promotion, a very nice promotion. But I told her, like, listen, I can't do this because what I know this position requires is something that I cannot afford because probably I will succeed career wise, but I'm putting my marriage at risk. And I'm afraid that I'm not going to be the father my son needs me to be. So I had to have that. So there's the pain that comes from. So basically, letting down the career, and then I had a couple of weeks left on paternity leave, so I sat home with the baby and the kids, and just like, I was basically staying at home dad for a couple of weeks, and I'm like, okay, a lot of questioning, a lot of doubt, because as a man, your armor just got shook, and you're like, how am I providing? How am I? How am I validating my existence? How am I being a nurturer? How am I being a hunter? I'm not. I'm just sitting here and just being a child. No, you're being a dad, you're being real, you're taking time for yourself, you're taking a breather. This is what you needed. And I had to accept that because there was a lot of blaming, there was a lot of negative self-talk, there was a lot of acceptance. And eventually that's where that journey started from, because it started with acceptance, it started with forgiveness, it started with dialogue, because I had a lot to unpack to my wife about how I felt, and there was a lot of accountability in regards to what does your formula look like? What do you want out of your life? What does a good day look like for you? Okay, you want to be here for the kids. You don't want to spend 2 hours in traffic. You want to live close to home. You want, okay, what are the numbers in terms of salary? Okay, what can you live with? What can you live without? And you know what? That's was my guiding compass. And in that regard, that's why I actually hit it up. And I'm like, I can't be the only person dealing with this. So that's when I picked up the phone and started recording just basic episodes. And that's what launched the podcast, basically.
Yeah, it's there's so much in that. It's amazing how, as men, we're conditioned to believe that we have three primary responsibilities: provide, protect, and procreate.
Mm-hmm.
So we get on this societal roller coaster thinking that our responsibility as providers is to provide. And in most cases, we're trying to bring home the bacon, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But don't you find it interesting that in a culture that says I know in America, they talk about family values,
Mm-hmm.
but the masculine culture has always conditioned us to be outside of the family, trying to provide.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're out there busting our butts trying to get all this stuff, try to make the money and the houses and all that. But the most important aspect is the family and connection. But society is actually keeping us from what we say is most important. So that was huge for you to, number one, gain the courage to say, hey, I'm going to break the status quo, man. My family is more important than all the stuff. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
willing to give up a few things to make sure that I'm the best husband and father that I can be. And that is commendable. That is really commendable.
And I
And
wish a lot more men would jump on that bandwagon because a lot of guys don't want to accept that fact that, you know what, take away everything else. Okay, take away the career, take away the bank account, take away the car. You could actually go dead broke tomorrow, but the worth and love and presence of your family and those you care about, a very solid family circle, is something that it's cheesy. It sounds very Hallmark card-ish, but it's priceless. You can't put a price tag on that, and you will find a way.
but
I'm sorry I cut you off.
unfortunately, most men aren't willing to make the emotional investment to make this a reality. Because when you start talking about intimacy and connection and vulnerability and togetherness, see, those things are foreign to a lot of men. Why? Because we're taught that we're supposed to be out there providing and protecting.
Hmm.
But we were never taught that the most important thing is connecting. And that's what we
Sure.
truly long for, but most of us don't know how to get it. And so that's why it's so important to have conversations like this so men can see that, yes, there are other men who have made that leap, if you will, past that old antiquated paradigm of masculinity in which they're
Hmm.
just killing themselves trying to, provide, but they're now wanting to connect. And once again, I'm an optimist. And what I see is more and more men are beginning to wake up to realize what's truly, truly important, as you just mentioned:
Hmm.
family, connection, all of those things. Those are the things that are really important. But it's amazing to me that in this day and age, so many men are still trapped in the idea that somehow, for example, being a stay-at-home dad invalidates them as a man. It's
Because
amazing
I've
how the resistance comes up because, for a couple of reasons, a lot of men struggle with the idea that their wife makes more money than them because,
hmm
again, we were supposed to be the providers and protectors. And if we aren't providing, then there's a sense of I'm not good enough as a man.
inefficiency, inadequate.
Yeah. So men struggle with that. So the challenge for men is to be courageous enough to say, there is another way. And let me assure you, as you're watching this, there is another way. Because what we have been conditioned to believe is that the joy and happiness that we really crave, we've been conditioned to believe that it's going to come from something out there. The position, the house, the car, the stuff. But it doesn't come from out there. It comes from in here. The greatest gift, the greatest miracle I've ever received for myself is after my divorce, during the darkest period of my life. I'm sitting up late one night because I'm too depressed to sleep. I'm sitting at the edge of my bed, looking across the room at my bookshelf. And I happen to notice that every book on my bookshelf has something to do with getting rich or making money. And as I looked at those books, this question just popped in my head. Michael, what if you took all the energy and effort you've used in trying to get rich
Hmm.
and simply figure out how to be happy? That simple question literally changed and saved my life in an instant. And so I simply got committed to being happy and being joyful. And it's been a challenge. It's been difficult. I've been on this journey for more than 25 years. But I can honestly say, in this very moment, as I'm speaking to you right now, I am happier now than I've ever been. My life
Wow.
is rewarding and fulfilling. I have a relationship with my wife that's amazing. I have 3 amazing kids that I love. I get to write, I get to speak, I get to empower people around the globe. So my life has meaning and fulfillment. And that's the journey that men must take. To be willing to, one of my favorite sayings is, if you don't go within, you will always go without.
That is
So
so powerful. And you know what? That is something that comes from the fact, and I'm just talking to my brothers because it does not make you less of a man. So this is a guy who understands you, all right? Wife, 2 kids, mortgage, full-time job. But it starts from acknowledging that you deserve. First of all, you need to be able to have that dialogue with yourself. It sounds kooky, but you need to have that connection within, as you said, to actually accept the fact that you are enough. Because we always, as men, we validate ourselves through execution and performance. That's what we do. Okay, we compare everything. We try. That's why we love races, and that's why we're good at sports. And it's always about comparing and execution and validation. So you take that away and just sit here and just yeah, you just want me to take care of a baby. Yeah, you can also validate yourself, guys. We talked about stuff earlier. Kids will forget about what you got them for Christmas, but they will hold you accountable for the fact that you showed up late picking them up for school, or you said we were going to watch Paw Patrol on Saturday morning but you slept in. True story. But it shows you that it's not the show that they want to watch. It's not the fact that you didn't pick them up. They don't care. They just want your attention. They want your presence. And trust me, that's a lot asking for kids who basically are spending the entire existence being subjected to the world. So when they have the audacity to ask you for your attention and your presence, that's a lot. That's them going beyond and just having the vulnerability to say like, "Hey, notice me. Hey, be here with me. I want to play with you." I play dolls with my daughter. I go watch Paw Patrol with my son. I hate the show, but he loves it. So I'm gonna watch it with him. So men need to know that yes, you need to take the leap and understand that it's not just about what you're providing, but it's also about the presence that you allow your immediate circle. And yes, you are enough. You are enough. And that's something that the conversation needs to keep going because men don't talk. Unfortunately, men don't talk. But conversations like these are just another nudge forward. And I really enjoy that. I really do.
yeah, and that's, to me, that's the only way we're going to heal our communities, because it all begins with self and our willingness, as you say, to love ourselves unconditionally. And I know a lot of men aren't comfortable with that because it almost sounds like you're being arrogant, but it's not. Authentic love for oneself is the foundation of everything, because you can't love someone else if you can't love yourself.
You can't get
Kids,
what you don't have.
kids included, wife included, country included, world included. If you don't love yourself, it will show up as I hate my country. I don't, you have all these judgments and negative experiences out there, but it's driven by I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, something's wrong with me. And then we just start projecting stuff out there, but it begins in here. And so that inner journey, that willingness to embrace and understand that as men, we live in a culture, regardless of what country you live in, we live in a culture, a masculine culture that says, as men, we aren't supposed to feel. We're taught that feelings are for women, but it is our inability, our unwillingness to feel that drives most toxic negative behavior, because we don't have the outlet to express whatever is going on for us. And so having a conversation like this with another man is so, so powerful, because it opens the door to let men know that it's okay. Because we all feel the same. Feelings aren't limited to just women. It's not limited to any culture. It's an energy within us. We all have it. But too many times as men, we suppress, repress, and deny our emotions. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
drives, or that's what causes the majority of pain and suffering in our life. So, you were talking about, your job and feeling that stress that you were, in essence, losing your family because you were so involved with your work. But what
Mm-hmm.
did you do emotionally to kind of heal that stress and disconnection? What did you do?
Well, first of all, it starts with the marriage because that's our foundations, it's our values. So I had to have a lot of talks with my wife. And first of all, when I had time to sit down when the kids were asleep, I, surely remember late at night when the babies were asleep, I'm like, babe, I want to apologize to you. I know that I try a lot and I was so focused on the job and trying to, as we say, bring home the bacon. I was not focused on the fact that yes, my not being here required you not only to be pregnant, but also with a 2-year-old at home, stuck at home in this house, with screaming kids. I don't know what that's like because, yeah, I'm out there, because I have no idea what you're doing here. I don't check in, I don't call, everything. I'm so focused on jobs. So that started with conversation, building another level of intimacy with myself and my wife. So I've apologized for that. I also tried to make peace with myself. And you know what? What I mean by make peace, you need to create that energy within you. Like I said, you can't give what you don't have. If you're a toxic person, you can only give that, into the universe. So for me, it was also about reconnecting with stuff that I enjoy doing. So it wasn't a vacation, but you know what? Just out of nowhere. See behind me, I got comic books. I love comics. I love comics. You know what? So give myself time to dive back into my comics. Some of them I bought but I hadn't read in years. And you know what? Let me just yeah, I used to like reading comics. I'm a movie buff. Schedule myself movie times. Saturday night, 11 o'clock, I'm in the basement, watch a movie. I don't need to watch a movie every day, but these little nuggets over time make me a nicer person. I also acknowledge the fact that I have good days and there are days where I just need to be by myself. Even again, more conversation with my wife. There are times where life is too much for me. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna talk to you like, babe, again, kids are asleep. I'm gonna put my coat on, go for a walk. Go for a walk, leave my phone at home. I will be safe. I love you. I'm not gonna go do anything drastic. I just need, Michael, I just need to escape from the world. And I just go into my neighborhood, very nice neighborhood. I just walk for like an hour and come back and I'm good. I'm good. Deal with the darkness, deal with the pain, and again, I'm not substance abusing. I'm not drinking or anything. I just need to reconnect. Just empty everything. And those are little tactics. Again, different story for different folks. My tactics don't work for you, but those were some of the steps that I took for myself. But also, the word is acceptance. I had to accept both the good and the bad and make peace with that so I could move on because I can't bring that baggage into my new, if you will.
Now, it's obvious, though, that you have done what I'll call some inner work, meaning you have an awareness about
Hmm.
yourself that not a lot of men have. So, did you learn this through reading books or therapy, or
Yes.
how did you come to this awareness that you have of yourself?
Obviously there was a lot of reading, but also you also need an outside perspective. I rely on my friends a lot. I have a very, very solid core group of friends, and there's some guys like back in Haiti, like some of my best friends, like who've known me for like 30 plus years, and you know what? I even remember this one time, this friend of mine, it's like a brother to me, and I'm like, listen, I need to call you because I need to sit down. No judgment, no judgment. And listen, over the past year, do you think that I've gotten worse or just give me an assessment? You're just basic assessment, of how I've been doing. And he told me, like, dude, I don't know, you're not as cheerful as you used to be. You're not as, fun as you used to be. And even as I'm telling you this, we're gonna flip it. My wife has a very large family because basically I'm all alone here in Montreal. But my extended family, if you will, my in-laws or like my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law. So we like to do some family outings, and we went to this lodge for like a weekend into a lodge, and my brother-in-law just having beers and stuff with the guys, and he's like, "I need to talk to you." So we went outside, just having a beer and everything. I need to talk to you, and like, what's up? I don't know what's going on. I don't know if we did something, but we miss you. It's like, what do you mean we miss you? It's like, I haven't seen the Ollie we know in a good 2 years. It's like, what are you doing? It's like every barbecue, everything. You're here. You're polite. You're present. You laugh when you speak when you're spoken to, but you're not here. I don't know what's going on, but if we can help, just let you know that we're here for you. And that coming from a man, because like he's a man's man, but it takes a man to understand a man in his man things. So that was one of the very resonating things for me. So with that awareness came a lot, like I said, a lot of internal dialogue, a lot of conversation, a lot of reading. Again, just like a lot of how can I say, like a lot of meditation also, just sitting down with yourself and analyzing the moment. What do you feel? How do you feel it? How can you react? Was this the best reaction? How can we reassess? It's all about what is happening within in order to better respond to the environment around you. And yeah, it's an ongoing process. It's not perfect, not always successful, but it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, and a couple of really important points that you've brought up. First of all, the importance of support systems. And as men, a lot of us don't have what I'll call an authentic support system to talk about in depth what's really going on for us. And so for you to have friends and family members that knew you well enough to know that you were off a little, see that's the importance of a authentic support system, because they recognized that you were off, could give you some feedback that could challenge you to become a little self-introspective to see what was causing you to be off. Now, I remember before I got involved in personal growth and all of this stuff, I remember um, I was getting ready to go through a divorce, and I wanted to go talk to a couple of my friends. And I didn't have a whole lot of close friends, but I had a couple of friends, neighbors, and we were sitting around this friend's on his patio. And I had this fear of telling them, number one, that I was about to get a divorce. I didn't want, there's a lot of shame there. I didn't want to really talk about it, but I just kind
I
of
understand.
just kind of got this feeling that, they're not going to really understand what I'm about to say. So I just sort of repressed and suppressed it and didn't talk about it. And I remember after that conversation going home and realizing that I really didn't have anybody in my life that I trusted enough to be that vulnerable with, to
Oh
share the
wow.
pain that I was in.
Oh wow.
And I knew that something had to change. And I ended up, again, getting divorced. And my saving grace was gaining the courage to go to therapy to start talking about some of the stuff that I was dealing with. And it was through that process of going to therapy, looking at some of the traumas that I was still carrying around from childhood and really addressing, some emotional issues that I learned the value of intimacy and connection. And how I got involved or how I gained the courage to go to therapy is like yourself. I love reading books. And anytime there's something going on, I'll read a book to figure it out. That's one of my gifts and one of my actually downfalls too, because I get stuck in my head sometimes. But I read a book by a guy named John Bradshaw, and he said this, and it stuck with me. He said, in he was talking about emotional healing, and he said the only way to create emotional healing is by creating what he called an interpersonal bridge with another human being. And he said that's the only way that you can heal. In other words, you have to be willing to share those feelings, whatever they might be, and
Everything
have
is
that.
energy.
I'm sorry?
Everything is energy. It's a
Yeah.
give, give. You have to.
So if you've got all this repressed and suppressed negative energy, for example, for me, I had a lot of shame that was pressed down. I needed to let it go. So gaining the courage to create that interpersonal bridge by sharing my story with this therapist, it set me free. And so that whole process of becoming self-introspective goes back to my point at the beginning. If you don't go within, you will always go without. If you don't take the
Yes.
time to look within your own heart and mind to see what's really driving your behavior, then you can't transform yourself. And so transformation is simply the process of recognizing those parts of yourself that you want to transform
Yep.
and being in touch with your emotions. In my experience, is the most important thing we'll ever do as men. Be willing to
And
acknowledge how we feel,
my
because most of
my
us
brothers.
can tell you what we think, but we don't honestly know how we feel. So getting in touch with your emotions is the foundation of transformation and healing. So uh,
That
I'm,
is
I'm I'm
key.
I'm excited to hear you say that. Number one, you had that support system. Number two, you were willing to talk about it. And even more importantly, you have a supportive wife who in which you can communicate with and share openly and honestly to address whatever may be keeping you from being the great husband and father that you are. So that speaks volumes about you as a man. And that's what
I appreciate
us,
it.
especially as black men, we need to have this conversation about how important that is. That's powerful. So, with that being said, man, we're starting to wind down. We didn't really get into your podcast, but I got a couple of questions about your
I'm
podcast
here. I'm here
because
if you need me. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
the podcast is important. So, first of all, you kind of touched upon it, but
Hmm.
why did you decide to launch a podcast? What was your intention?
The thing is, Awaken the Awesome is basically the volume two because it wasn't my first podcast. My first podcast in a past life when I used to do photography like on the regular, because there was so many photography podcasts going on at the time, and I used to blog as I write a lot, I blog a lot, and just for fun because I've got a lot of photography friends here in Montreal, and I started writing blog posts, written interviews, if you will. And a friend of mine basically suggested, hey, you should try reaching out to those podcasters, those photographers you listen to on the podcast and stuff like This Week in Photo, which I did. There was this particular photographer in California. His name's David Esquire. I became a mentor and a friend. And when I reached out to him, he contacted me like 24 hours later. He was like, dude, your questions are so dynamic. We should do a podcast about this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because hey, superstar photographer, California, I'm dude, just writing a blog post. Please just answer the questions so I can post them. No, 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 we're gonna do this. And he was very insistent. We're gonna do this, we're gonna figure it out, which I did. So it's amazing when you have that urgency that will boost your creativity. So I managed to figure it out, and we did episode one, which actually landed 14 episodes in, And what was missing there was the consistency, because it's one thing to have a hobby and have a, a serious passion, if you will, but do you love it enough to create content about it week after week after week? Didn't have it. So how that transition to Awaken the Awesome was basically still in that period where I was stuck at home and everything, and just talking to my wife again, start talking about everything I was feeling and the feelings of inadequacy, and how can I do better and how can I serve the world. And I used to write a lot, and like, purpose and a lot of introspection. And my wife was like, "Well, you've always enjoyed broadcasting. You're a good writer. You're a good talker. You're a good conversationalist, and you said it yourself. You can't be the only person going through this. Why don't you just make a podcast about it? You know?" And I was like, "Wow, that's why I married you." So basically, I just ran with it. And that's where, you always cultivate the experiences of your life, because you never know. Because from the experience of the first podcast, I knew exactly what I wanted in the new one and what I didn't want in the new one. So the podcast came really from the fact that, you know what? I'm going to use myself as the guinea pig along this journey of growth and personal development through conversations of people out there, whether in Montreal or in New Zealand. We're all trying to do better every day, as I like to say. So, and that's how the conversation happened, just one episode at a time.
There you go. Now, you mentioned you've done, over 100 and something podcasts.
Yes, sir.
So, what's a powerful lesson you've learned from one of your podcasts that has actually helped you in your life?
Oh, wow. So many lessons. So many lessons. But one I will never hesitate to bring back is, what are you willing to suffer for?
Mm.
It's from my guest Thierry Landor. He's a personality here in Montreal. He's very present in the community, and he's done so many things. I can't even begin to list his pedigree, but he's such a dynamic individual who's got such a great heart, especially with everything going on with the George Floyd incident. He's on IG Live every night talking to the people and local notable personalities here. But all this to say that when I connected with him, first of all, he was so generous of his time, and the fact that he was so earnest in his time in talking about suffering, not in terms of a taboo, in terms of like plight or damnation, but sacrifice, time, commitment, involvement, devotion. What deserves your time? What deserves your interest? What deserves your commitment? What deserves your effort and energy and resources? What are you willing to suffer for? Is it your kids? Is it your wife? Is it your career? He even asked me, Olivier, are you willing to suffer for podcasting? Are you willing to put in the hours? Are you willing to make these connections and do those long hours of editing? Are you willing to not sleep, because, you have a guest booked? What are you willing to suffer for? Are you willing to suffer to lose weight? Are you willing to miss, some outings with your buddies because you're trying to launch this new startup? What are you willing to suffer for? That's a powerful lesson, and I really take that to heart. And so many other ones, some, your disability is your superpower. Don't ever let people try to make you feel ashamed of who you are. You know who you are, and that is what sets you apart from the rest. We all have it, that one thing within us that you do better than somebody else. Once you connect with that, you are unstoppable. So many lessons, but that's just two I could just go ran off with.
Nice. Nice. So, as we wind down, as mentioned, there's obviously lots of challenges out there for men of color.
Oh, for
So,
sure.
I want you to close out with your final thoughts of inspiration and motivation to the brothers who are going to be watching this and maybe struggling with, this whole thing about being a black man in the world today. So, what are your final closing thoughts on
First
that?
of all, Mike, I want to thank you for this opportunity. This was a terrific, terrific energy. Again, I applaud you for your mission that you've been, carrying courageously and earnestly, for the past 20 plus years, and trying to open up this platform and open up these conversations through your teachings and your coachings and your writings. So this is a tremendous mission that you set for yourself, and I can only thank you for that, because one conversation at a time is how we're going to change the dynamic. So I want to thank you for that. I'm really honored. To my brothers out there. Um, Again, normal guy, not a superhero, not a guru, not a superstar, 10 million person book speaker guy, just a guy, a father, husband, two kids, mortgage, full time job. I understand you. It is not easy. I understand the challenge. I understand the circumstances. I understand the struggles. I understand the fears. I understand the uncertainties. I understand the injustices. I understand the frustrations. But I also know that the courage within you lies at the other end of your choice. Choose to be better. Choose to do better. Choose to rise above. No matter what unfairness you think how you've been dealt with, on those circumstances, those restrictions also are going to breed resourcefulness. They're going to breed creativity. They're going to breed a certain sense of ferociousness that you need to develop. Do not come with hatred. Do not come with anguish. Do not come with rancor. Come with love. Come with understanding of openness in mind and heart. And know that through conversations, because I know that men don't talk. So it only starts with your willingness to share, your willingness to serve, and your humility to accept that you are enough. And that is something I pray for every single one of the guys listening to this. If we can impact just one life, it's a job well done. And I invite anyone to open up that conversation. For the next guy next to you, it is possible, but we need to shatter the stereotype of just being closed off and carrying that weight, because we need to share it, because you have a guy right next to you. If we can talk about, the last dance as we can talk about Kobe, we can talk about the last sports game. I don't watch sports, but if we can talk about that for hours on end at the barbershop, maybe we can talk about, hey, how's the wife? How are the kids? How are you dealing with the job? These are conversations that need to keep going because they matter. I'm sorry, I just rambled. It just came from the heart. I just felt like I needed to say that.
Well, with that being said, how can people find your podcast?
I'm all over the place. I'm all over all the platforms. So if iTunes is your tool of preference, Awaken the Awesome. All three words are Awaken the Awesome. Just Google it, and I'm there. Google Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify. Awaken the Awesome. Basically, just type that, and you'll find me. I'm pretty easy. And the main website is awakentheawesome.ca. Canada, whatever. But awakentheawesome.ca is the website.
Well, Mr. Day, I just want to say thank you, brother, for being the light that you are. And once again, there are no accidents in a perfect universe. And we've been brought together to share a powerful, positive message. And I completely align with you in your idea about awakening the awesome. Because as I mentioned before,
Likewise.
as you're watching this, you have a spark of divinity in you. It is your responsibility to awaken it, to tap into it, to connect with it. And when you do, nothing will be impossible for you. Like Oliver said, I'm an ordinary guy who simply made a commitment that he was going to live an extraordinary life. And so if I can overcome being a high school dropout, divorce, bankruptcy, foreclosure, depression, being homeless for 2 years, living out of a car, to now being an entrepreneur, author of 8 books, motivational speaker, radio and TV show host. If I can overcome those obstacles to be living my dream, rest assured you can overcome any obstacle that may be in front of you. So don't believe the hype of the negative media. Shatter the stereotypes about what's possible for Black men. Tap into your divinity and create the life you know internally you're capable of. My prayers are with you. You're not alone. We're here for you.
Not alone.
So that's the key. You're not alone. So again, my man, Mr. Oliver, I appreciate you. I love you, man. I'm so glad we've connected. I look forward to doing this again for sure.
Not the last. Not the last. I'm always available. It's been a thrill. It's been a thrill.
Absolutely. So again, this has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes, and I want to leave you with this. Awaken the awesome in you. Take care. We'll see you in the next episode.
See you next time.